There is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of the Nephilim. The Genesis 6 narrative states that the Nephilim are on the earth in those days and also afterwards. If that's true, can we find evidence that corroborates this? I'm L.A. Marzulli. Join me as we go on the trail of the Nephilim. Guess what we're going to be talking about today on the Trail of the Nephilim? Yep, you got it. We're going to talk about these elongated skulls and how this keeps coming back in the mainstream media, in the news. They find these burials with elongated skulls. We did a deep dive on this. It's available on our website, and we'll get into this and so much more. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor, Noble Gold. And before I let you go, gold has gone through the roof. Now, it might be changing. I don't know. But I think it went up almost $70 last week. That's a big jump. With the banks failing, you might want to check into this. The links are down below. We've invested in it, and there you have it. Anyway, folks, we'll see you right after the commercial. We are at war, and we are in a recession. Two things the government doesn't want you to know, but it's only a matter of time until cracks start to show. And do you know who will get hit the most? Most likely you and me. That's why you need to protect yourself and your family, because things will only get worse. Fortunately, Noble Gold Investments is here to help you. You've worked too hard to build up your savings and investments to see it all crushed to bits. And the financial fallout from the wars, the trade tariffs, and the sanctions that are bound to happen. Gold and silver from Noble Gold Investments are real possessions in times like these. Knowing that you're outside the system when it all goes wrong is a great feeling. And a surefire way to keep your money safe for your retirement is a precious metals IRA. Noble Gold Investments has been helping people like you and me to keep their money safe for years with these. And this month, they're giving away a beautiful gold eagle bullion coin with every qualifying IRA or $50,000 or higher. Folks, make sure you don't get trampled. I know we've invested in Noble Gold, and gold is on the rise. Even though it went down a little bit, it's going back up. Folks, visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. These skulls came from the Paracas History Museum. Senior Juan was the curator of that. Senior Juan is a native Peruvian. He grew up there. He grew up in the area of Paracas, in that general area. And as a boy, he would travel around and look at these ancient ruins, these ancient pyramids, these burial mounds. And remember, the Huacaros, the grave robbers, were robbing graves for basically hundreds of years. So he began to look into this, and he started a museum, basically collecting all these artifacts from a lifetime, and opened up this little museum, the Paracas History Museum. It's since been moved. I don't even know whether it's open or not. But when we were there way back in 2013, and I want to give a shout out to Brian Forrester. If it wasn't for Brian and showing on YouTube the elongated skulls, I never would have gotten down there. This opened up a vista, if I can use that word, of information. Unbelievable. And our team was the only team that actually extracted DNA that we know of. Now, there was a team from Gaia, apparently, that went down and took 100 samples, and they also did testing on it. They have a completely different paradigm and worldview than we do, and that's fine. And they came up with basically the same conclusions we did, except they were able to obtain nuclear DNA. Guess what? It was not found in the gen bank. In other words, it was an unknown primate. I want to thank Mondo Gonzalez, Rick Woodward, Chase Klotsky, the late, and my business partner, the late Richard Shaw, who came down and filmed everything. Joe Taylor, who molded the skulls. Aaron Junkins, who was one of our early archaeologists. Judd Burton, who also looked at the skulls and examined them. And I hope he's doing well. But that being said, folks, I want to walk through some of this. It amazes me. In fact, There's a skull in Oklahoma. It's got a metal plate on the side of the skull. So is it trepanation? Yeah. Is it surgery? Very possibly. Why are they doing this? And of course, I asked to see the skull. I offered a $1,000 donation to the Osteology Museum in Oklahoma. They didn't accept my offer. They won't let me look at it. Why is that, folks? Why is that? Why are people like myself and Graham Hancock and Brian Forrester, just to name a few, Mondo Gonzalez, our archaeologist, Rick Woodward, why are we looked at and always pushed back? And, oh, you can't come here. And, oh, this is forbidden from you. I want to talk about this skull. And it was molded by the late Joe Taylor. The first thing we need to notice is that it's incredibly elongated. I get that. And mainstream archaeology and the powers that be in Peru will insist that this skull was cradle headboarded. Let's walk through it. First of all, there's no sagittal suture. There should be a sagittal suture on the top of the skull. We don't see it. In Paracas, there's a preponderance of skulls without a sagittal suture. Why is that? I mean, there is a disease called craniosynostosis, and it can be there, it can be genetic, but what we see in the general population of the people in Paracas where these skulls, remember, these things are like 2,000, 3,000 years old, all right? But the smoking gun, well, before I get to that, so craniosynostosis, why is it that so many of the skulls lack a sagittal suture? We talked to our optometrist on our team. You can check us out by going to our website, lamarzulli.net, and you can stream them at streaming.lamarzulli.net. You can check out all of our DNA. Look, folks, this cost us tens of thousands of dollars, and I want to take a moment and thank our sponsor for believing in us, and they wish to remain anonymous, but I can't thank them enough. Without them, this information never, ever would have seen the light of day. In fact, the pushback was incredible. They never attack the evidence. They just say, oh, all the DNA was contaminated. Really? Let's look at the morphological oddities in the skull. Lack of cranial suture, as I've already talked about. Dr. Duff talked about the orbits being 25 to 30% larger than a normal human being. Also, the pupillary distance was closer, thereby giving this entity the ability to see in the dark. Speaking to that, when I was down in 2019 in Peru with Timothy Alberino and the crew that he was filming, and I think that film is going to come out. It features Chase Klotsky and myself talking about the elongated skulls in Peru. What was interesting, we were able to go into what's called the reserve. The reserve is an area which you can't get into unless you've got a pass or an archaeologist. So Tim had arranged for this Peruvian archaeologist to kind of open the doors. And he took us to one of the places, and I had never been there before, where the Paracas people, the people with the elongated skulls, created their dwellings. What was interesting about this, there was a chimney of river rock that went down. I said, how far does it go down? 20, 30 feet, yeah. Is there evidence of torchlight down in these caverns? No. How did they see? We don't know. Let's go back to Dr. Duff. Dr. Duff stated on the record that because of the pupillary distance, the size of the orbits was larger and the pupillary distance was narrower. He posited that these entities could have seen them in the dark. And you know what, folks? Frankly, I agree with him. The smoking gun came from Rick Woodward, and that's right here. I'm going to push in on this so you can see it. What you're looking at here is the foramen magnum. This is where the skeleton attaches to the brain, right there. Now, what you're seeing, this white part in here, is the area that Joe Taylor used to basically hold a dowel. So this was clay, which he put in there. But you can see this, the brain stem right around here. This is called the foramen magnum. This is the smoking gun. Once again, we have to thank Rick Woodward for this. You'll notice that it's all the way to the posterior of the skull. If it's pushed back any further, it's outside the skull. So what we see here is a genetic anomaly. In fact, the medical doctors, the surgeons, the people that examine the skull, look at the placement of the foramen magnum. And once again, hats off to Rick Woodward. He's the first person that I'm aware of that turned the skull over and said, wait a minute, this foramen magnum should be here. should be in the center of a skull. You can cradle headboard a child all you want, but you can't move the position of the foramen magnum. So we have medical doctors and surgeons, all sorts of people come on the record and state that whatever this is, it is absolutely, in their opinion, genetic. That's why we're on the trail of a Nephilim. Why is this important? Because we believe this could be one of the Nephilim tribes, specifically the Horites, who were designated as cave dwellers. We know this from another archaeologist over in Israel, that they were not giants. We understand that. They weren't the Nephilim or the Anakim, long necks, right? As far as we know, but we really don't know what they called themselves. So we took samples from this. We had 3 different samples. We took them to 3 different places. The one I'm able to mention without getting in trouble is the Paleo DNA lab up in Canada. We still have an open door there. Thank you to Stephen and Renee Fat Pietro for allowing us to continue to send our samples. We have new samples from another site. More about that in the coming weeks. But the bottom line is all 3 of them, there's no collusion between the labs, by the way. All 3 of them said U2E1, that's Eastern Europe. Why is this important? Because it shouldn't be there. It rewrites history as we know it. So let's walk through it. We've got orbits. We have morphological differences in the skulls, structural differences in the skulls. We've got orbits, which are 25 to 30% bigger. We've got a lack of a sagittal suture. We've got a foramen magnum, which is pushed all the way to the posterior of a skull. We have DNA evidence showing U2E1 that is from Eastern Europe. We have red hair. All of this rewrites history. What are they so afraid of? You want to know what? They're afraid of because there is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated for the peoples of the world. And that's why I, your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli, am on the trail of the Nephilim. Folks, we'll be back tomorrow with a very special episode. I think you'll find it interesting on the UFO phenomena. I'm going to go through all 13 steps, actually 14 now, steps on the rungs of the disclosure ladder. We need to keep you abreast of what is happening because they're revealing it. And at some point, there will be full disclosure. Thanks so much for watching. Remember our website, the Crop Circle video is now available on our streaming site, streaming.lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net. Folks, I will be down in Jupiter in April. It's coming up. Can't wait for that. Don't forget our DNA evidence. If you're at all interested in what we've been talking about here, you can do a deep dive with this. It's on our streaming site, streaming.lamarzulli.net, or if you want, you can just order it by going to lamarzulli.net. Thanks so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button. We're up over 187,000 subscribers. We thank you for coming here. Tell a friend about our show. It's very unique. We look at everything through a biblical perspective lens. Folks, our mission statement to expose the deception of the prince of the power of the air and to herald the return of the King, Jesus. I think we've exposed what he's doing. These are, in my opinion, genetic aberrations. That's why they are Nephilim. They're not giants, but I do believe that these are the remnants of the Nephilim. They no longer exist in Peru. They all died off and did so very mysteriously. Very mysteriously. Maybe that's another subject for another time. Remember, there is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why we are on the trail of the Nephilim.